What we're musing around is in fact the origins of civilization, and I'll show the book. There's a famous book from the 30s, 40s. Norbert Elias's The Civilizing Process, where he's talking about how in the development of etiquette, manners, behavior over the course of from the High Middle Ages, like the chivalry moment, into like the modern states, the people, the aristocracy particularly, train themselves to behave so that they can be taken over by the state effectively, right? That the state, and this obviously is internet relative, right? Because we've been watching Facebook trying to police us all into being able to say something about, stuff, right? That will get our accounts obliterated or silenced if we talk about X. And so we're going through what Elias is describing now in the internet world, but he's describing how it happened in the actual historical time frame. And one of the cool things about the book is he did a lot of study of etiquette manuals from the period on blowing one's nose. And I used to use this as a handout in my Eurociv class at the introduction of part 2, saying, how did people become civilized? How do we even consider what counts as proper behavior by the time John Stuart Mill is writing on liberty and how social experiments are good? It took a long time for them to learn how to blow their nose, right? Go back to here you are at the fancy 13th century banquet. Okay. I primed her a little bit, guys, so she should know the answer if she remembers. How would you, in this banquet in the 13th century, blow your nose? Bon Vivant de la Riva in his De la Cinquanta Cortes. I don't know how to pronounce this because language I don't know. Some kind of weird romancy language. It's like, the courtesy of the table from the 13th century.
Didn't they just put their finger on one nostril and turn and give it a hard blow?
That's it, right? When you blow your nose or cough, turn round so that nothing falls on the table. I love this because it's like how, if you did that right now in a dinner party, it's like, how would you be polite at, King Arthur's table? It's like you go like that, blow your nose over your shoulder. So it falls on the rushes and the dogs get in it and stuff. Okay. So by the 15th century, 100 years, 200 years later, and you could tell from these etiquette manuals what, people were actually doing, so that you have to tell them not to do it. This is Ein Spruch der Zeitliche Kehrt, so German. It is unseemly to blow your nose into the tablecloth. So by now we know they have tablecloths, but don't just grab it and blow your nose, okay? So by the 15th century, you know not to do that. This is in the chivalric moment, right? It's like, you better, never mind the turkey legs that King Henry VIII could not have had, but the table manners. You wouldn't be able to do this in a movie, right? Because nobody would believe that this is like, if you be rough and raw, blow your nose. Okay, so there's a French one that says, "Do not blow your nose with the same hand that you used to hold the meat." Switch hands. You're blowing your nose. All right. By the 16th century. This is it's in Latin. To blow your nose on your hat or clothing is rustic, and to do so with the arm or elbow befits a tradesman. Right. So it's like the social status of how you behave is clear, right? Nor is it much more polite to use the hand if you immediately smear the snot on your garment. It is proper to wipe the nostrils with a handkerchief. We now have handkerchiefs. This is the 16th century. And to do this while turning away if more honorable people are present. I mean, it's fascinating. We have books that say this. So that there's someone writing this out to say this is the behavior that we should have. If anything falls to the ground when blowing the nose with 2 fingers, it should be immediately trodden away. So you're blowing your nose on the floor, but it's okay. 1558, Della Casa Galateo. You should not offer your handkerchief to anyone unless it has been freshly washed. I
can get on board with that one.
Nor is it seemly, after wiping your nose, to spread out your handkerchief and peer into it as if pearls and rubies might have fallen out of your head. Don't look at it. It gets better. Nouveau Traité de Civilité, I don't know how to say it, 1672. At table, to blow your nose openly into your handkerchief without concealing yourself with your serviette and to wipe away your sweat with it are filthy habits to make everyone's gorge rise. You should avoid yawning, blowing your nose, and spitting. If you are obliged to do so in places that are kept clean, do it in your handkerchief while turning your face away and shielding yourself. So now, not just a handkerchief. Now it's not even polite anymore just to use the handkerchief. You have to turn away. And shield yourself with your left hand and do not look into your handkerchief afterwards. Ménage, Etymological Dictionary of French, 1694. Handkerchief for blowing the nose. As the expression blowing the nose gives a very disagreeable impression, ladies ought to call this a pocket handkerchief. You thought word policing was new, right? We're not. We can't. You can't say this is. You can't use that word because that might be a pocket handkerchief because otherwise people think about blowing your nose. As the one says, neckerchief rather than a handkerchief for blowing the nose. Okay. By 1714 in Liège, take good care not to blow your nose with your fingers or on your sleeve like children. Use your handkerchief and do not look into it afterwards.
No looking.
No looking. Okay. Now, this is very interesting. By 1729, La Salle publishes this Rules of Christian Civility. Civilité chrétienne. 1729. This is a little longer one, but we need this, right? We need to know how to behave like Christians in the early 18th century. It is very impolite to keep poking your finger into your nostrils. And still more insupportable to put what you have pulled from your nose into your mouth. Don't eat your boogers. Here, don't be him. It is vile to wipe your nose with your bare hand or to blow it on your sleeve or your clothes. It is very contrary to decency to blow your nose with two fingers and then to throw the filth onto the ground and wipe your fingers with your clothes. It is well known how improper it is to seize. We can see this, like, we're going to get handbooks on how to behave on the internet, right? That are like, it's unseemly to this. We're going to like Karen level description of how you should behave. Well known how improper it is to see such uncleanliness on clothes, which should always be very clean, no matter how poor they may be. Ooh, now the poor, remember, before it's tradesmen could blow into there, but now even the poor, okay. There are some who put one finger on one nostril and by blowing through their nose cast onto the ground the filth inside. Remember, that was what was polite in the 13th century. Those who act thus are people who do not know what decency is. You should always use your handkerchief to blow your nose and never anything else, and doing so usually hide your face with your hat. So now it's not enough to use a handkerchief. You have to do it with behind your hat. You should avoid making a noise when blowing your nose. No honking. Before blowing it, it is impolite to spend a long time taking out your handkerchief. Do it very delicately, right? It shows a lack of respect toward the people you are with to unfold it in different places to see where it is. You should take your handkerchief from your pocket and use it quickly in such a way that you are scarcely noticed by others. After blowing your nose, you should take care not to look into your handkerchief. It is correct to fold it immediately and replace it in your pocket. Mel, my boys have no etiquette, very feral. Well, Mel, that's your fault. Because according to the 1774 edition of the same book, every voluntary movement of the nose, whether caused by the hand or otherwise, is impolite and puerile. To put your fingers into your nose is a revolting impropriety, and from touching it too often, discomforts may arise, which are felt for a long time. Children are sufficiently in the habit of committing this lapse. Parents should correct them carefully. Mel, you should observe in blowing your nose all the rules of propriety and cleanliness, which we no longer list.
My nose is so itchy since you've been reading this. I want to itch my nose.
Touch your nose.
Do it.
Don't touch your nose. There was a list that came across my transom today. It's like all the behaviors that are horribly rude. Okay, so this one is, what screams I am low class? This was in Quora. Here are 12 rude behaviors that scream I'm low class. See if there are points that annoy you. Using speakerphone. No one needs or wants to hear your private conversations. Blocking the aisles in Walmart and grocery stores. Not returning the shopping cart. Screams you're low class if you don't return the shopping cart. This should be a simple thing to do, but parking lots are full of unreturned shopping carts.
You're just describing Australia.
Bad table manners. Slurping, smacking, and chewing with one's mouth open is offensive and just plain gross, etc. It carries. Leaving messes in public bathrooms. What I find interesting about the the etiquette books is it ends up with saying your mother should have taught you. Right? All of these things. So it's like we've had these handbooks. The only reason I can go through that is somebody wrote it down and thought this was like, remember it started with these are etiquettes for the chivalry, right? The high courtesy, the people in their in their banquets and so forth. And we end up with, and then we go through these that gets more and more elaborate. Don't use your, hide behind your hat. Don't look at your handkerchief. To your mother should have told you. And this took like, this particular process goes over like 500 years. Now, I rather think it's going to be a little quicker in the internet world.
In the e-duchies?
In the e-duchies, partly because it went faster in the Wild West, in the American Wild West. You said you started with talking about watching Twilight Zone. We watched Deadwood recently.
Who's your favorite Deadwood character? I have to ask.
Well, I've been watching a lot of Justified before I watched Deadwood, so I was, Timothy Olyphant's just like, he was here filming. Apparently, they were doing a new Justified episode, and they kept getting caught in gun battles in the neighborhoods they were using to film. Apparently, they don't know to like not drive through film sets shooting at each other on the west side of Chicago at the moment. You'd think
someone should write an etiquette
book about how to behave well in the American city, and
chivalric gun battles in Chicago.
Do you think they know how to have chivalric gun battles in Chicago? As for example in Deadwood?
I don't think so. No, not judging by the news reports.
Oh,
there hasn't been an established gun battle etiquette yet.
I'm not so sure about that. I think they have a high etiquette. I'm sure they know what they're doing in those situations. I mean, this is what's ironic about anything you're studying in the Middle Ages is basically studying the period in which the guys with the guns had swords and were marauding through the countryside, stealing from the peasants and holding each other to high, weregild and honor killings. Weregild and honor killings, it's straight up, well, I mean, assuming they're dealing with precious commodities from, far reaches of the Mediterranean, like, I don't know, slaves. I don't know that they're selling slaves on the south side of Chicago. We know they're selling slaves in other parts of the world. They just call them by different names. Like sex workers. We can do this. We can bring it back around to the behavior that should be belong between women and men, because it's clearly all folded into this problem of what the civilizing process is, what manners are, how we should behave. I mean, there's a culture, but what's the culture? We are now in the saloon appropriately. Although I think I didn't find any pictures of the bar women in Deadwood. I do have a picture of the sheriff and his wife. You remember who his wife is?
Oh yes, his dead brother's wife that he marries in order to.
So she has a man.
Redeem her.
So she has a husband.
From penury. Very Old Testament. So Ian McShane's character Al Swearingen, who's appropriately named because he swears more than anybody else in the entire show. But he's probably the most intelligent out of anybody in that environment too, which makes it all the more humorous to hear him going off the way he does verbally, because you can see him constantly frustrated that he is really surrounded by morons. And in another time and place, he probably would have been running a duchy. Yeah. It's a house of sin, and yet they do have behavioral codes. They have expectations of how the men are supposed to behave. The men are putting their hands on the whores, or if they're trying to rape them, Swearingen comes in and shoots, or gets one of his men to go in and shoot them. This odd, I don't know if you call it anti-chivalry with Swearingen and his treatment of these women, because it's very strange. It's very, very strange. And then the other female characters that are in that environment all develop this kind of they're very accustomed to the violence of the place. Yeah. And then they have to in turn become very responsive to it. They're hardened by it. They're not dainty suburbanites. They're frontier women. Shame tax.
The shame.
That shame tax.
What screams I'm lower class. Not teaching or enforcing manners in children. Allowing children to run wild in public places and letting them scream and throw tantrums is rude behavior.
The internet is full of tantrums.
Oh yeah.